I think now we want to be the best, and we think we are the best in the country. But to be the best in Mississippi, that was our area of work. That's where we were, and that's where we were trying to do work. We were starting to grow, and we had an opportunity on this big dormitory project. The architects and the owner were out of New York, and I had been to New York. They took bids, and we had been selected to do the project, and I had been working for 6 weeks on the project. And the owner decided that they would reject the bids. They were incomplete plans, finish the plans, and go back out for bids again. And I was just devastated, and I told my dad what had happened. And he said, and how many board members did you meet while you were in New York? I said, well, I met most of them. And said, and the specifications said they would negotiate in good faith. And I said, they did. But now they rejected us. He said, why don't you call the members that you met when you were in New York and talk to them and tell them how you feel about that. So I took his advice and I did that. And then the next thing I knew, he was knocking on my door on early Sunday morning because he had picked up the mail, and he said, hey, they reconvened. It looks like here's the contract. That they had signed the contract and sent it to us. That led to be a very successful project for us, 10 times larger than anything we'd had to date. And it was one of the turning points in the history of the company without any question. We would not have had the project had Dad not said to me, why don't you call them and tell them how you feel about this? The way the company got started in doing some of our own site work was that on a small project in central Mississippi, we had our site work contractor walk off the project. We had a time frame, and we wanted to satisfy the schedule, and we just leased some equipment and immediately took over that work and performed it ourselves. And we realized that we could do that. We learned to self-perform, and that separated us from so much of our competition. Meanwhile, on our industrial side, doing forest products work, we had been very successful in satisfying Weyerhaeuser with their plywood work, and we had become their plywood contractor here as they moved to the south. They decided to do a paper mill in Columbus, Mississippi, and they were looking for someone to do the site work, which was a huge job at that time. It was over 2 million yards of dirt to move with scrapers. We got on the list and turned in a proposal. Because of the success that we had had with them in the plywood work, they took us at our word that we could do what we said we could do on the site work, and they negotiated the site work contract with us. The first significant Weyerhaeuser project we had was a turnaround project where they had bought the mill in Philadelphia, Mississippi. It had a plywood plant in it, and they were going to change out the green end. That's part of the plywood plant. We ended up getting the project. We knew that we had 42 days in the contract. Weyerhaeuser told us later on that they really thought that was probably impossible, but they were hoping for 42. We were so determined to be the best contractor they ever had, we did it in 24 and a half days. And after that, we worked for Weyerhaeuser, not only Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and the Carolinas, and we continued to work for Weyerhaeuser. I have said it was never about how big we could be, and it still is not. It's how good we can be. It turns out that being good and being the best has opened doors that we probably never realized would open to us. We have clients that want us as much as we want the project. And that's exciting to be wanted because we think we're the best, and they know we're striving to be the best.